The apocalypse, the total destruction of the world, or an event resulting in catastrophic damage. Today we will be focusing on the latter half of that definition, because unfortunately there's just not a whole lot we can do about the sun eating us, Ragnarok, or whatever final obliteration you believe in. So unwinnable and joke circumstances aside, let's take a gander at some very realistic half-apocalypses, the far more likely scenarios in which our civilization steeply goes into a decline and, while still surviving, reaches Mad Max levels of insanity due to food shortages, violence, government oppression, etc., etc., all that fun stuff. And laugh all you want at what a crazy prepper I'm being. Preppers have been the butt of people's jokes for decades, and actually, you know what? To be fair, I don't blame people. We have been so oversaturated by asinine doomsday predictions from politicians and charlatans for years. The Arctic was supposed to be ice-free by 2018. The Maldives underwater. We've been wrongly predicting peak oil for over a century. But strangely enough, I find all the people who buy into these false doomsday cries by the governments, usually pushing them to pass bills or raise taxes or some nonsense, these are all the same people who will mock preppers as being paranoid. They're like, listen people, you have to freak out about the world ending, but the only response you should have is to give the government more money. No thanks, I'll pass. Don't think I want to rely on the most likely group to bring about the apocalypse to save me from it. And while the government will almost certainly be wrong in their predictions of how it will happen, if you're not anticipating some sort of future disaster, human history points to you being the delusional one, not the people you're mocking. It doesn't really matter what form this takes either. It could be a disease outbreak that results in the government making COVID restrictions look like a day at the park. Maybe a communist or fascist uprising where innocents are murdered and killed, invasion by an outside force, supply chain collapse and food shortages resulting in crime, chaos, and looting. All things that have happened or are happening somewhere in the world right at this moment. But okay, Democrats, just keep mocking concerned citizens, why don't you?
And so in their mind, they might be confident. They might think that they're diehard, ready to go. But unfortunately, they're more like Tiger King, and they're putting themselves and their families in danger. And so what I would suggest is for those people who were first-time gun owners, if they did go out and buy a gun, I would secure that gun locked and unloaded and hide it behind the cans of tuna and beef jerky that you've stored in a cabinet, and only bring that out if the zombies start to appear. And I don't think they are.
Bitches not invited to my bomb shelter slumber party. No, that doesn't suit me. Speaking of said slumber party though, where is this happening? How can you prep your own? Well, we are going to get into the top 5 things you need to know and or do to protect yourself. And these are all things I am actively doing, have done, or plan on leeching off my family members who have already prepped them. But first, an extremely fitting sponsor for this video, Noble Gold. For years now, people have been setting up a little contest between crypto and gold. But that's like comparing a truck with an SUV. Both carry stuff and travel from A to B, but they do different jobs. Gold's job is to keep the value of your money safe and preserve its value. And since Ukraine and the oil and inflation crisis, it has done a brilliant job compared to other stocks and investments. So if you're worried about what's going on right now, just talk to an expert at Noble Gold about precious metal IRAs for your retirement. They'll put you straight on your options and hold your hand through the entire setup process. And this month, for any qualified IRA, you will get an incredible 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin, completely free as a thank you. Call 877-646-5347 now to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. All right, I realize that some of these tips may be impossible due to financial reasons for some of you. Others are absolutely accessible to anyone watching this, so stick around because we are jumping head first, feet first, something first into the hardest but most rewarding tips. Number 1, Get the hell out of the city. This tip can even potentially save you from the total annihilation unsurvivable circumstances just by virtue of being nowhere near target zones for nuclear warheads or other people if they're zombies. But more importantly, getting out of the city will keep you well away from the more realistic half-apocalypse concerns: crime, government, plague, invasion. If you look over at our friends in Shanghai, currently dealing with food shortages, government lockdown to the point they're being starved to death, a lot of that would just be impossible to enact in small towns or rural areas. The amount of active police officers and military combined in America, which tends to have a larger police and military than most of the world, makes up less than 1% of their population. But let's exaggerate that and just say it is a total 1%. The only reason 1% could control the movement of 99% of people and whether they left their house or not is if those 99% were in confined areas with massive surveillance. So cities, small towns, regional farming areas obviously have police, but everyone living in said regions are extremely spread out. And it would be impossible for the police and military to monitor or be at everyone's properties at the same time. Unless, of course, it got to the point where they're knocking on doors taking you off to concentration camps, in which case, doesn't really matter where you live at this point. At least in the middle of nowhere, you're gonna have a head start to run. Also, living in smaller towns, you typically know your local police, which makes the likelihood of them committing atrocities against you significantly lowered than some nameless, faceless dude marching into your 80-story apartment complex. And don't forget, last benefit here, the middle of nowhere is the only place property is affordable anyways. Thanks to you. Mass foreign ownership, unsustainable migration, and building restrictions. Great work. Just a few months ago, someone in Kansas was selling this whole-ass missile silo for only $380,000. You can't even get a one-bedroom apartment in the city for that. But I understand many can't just get up, leave their home or work, so don't worry, if you can't do this, there are still other options for you to survive and thrive during the chaos. Tip 2. Get an off-roading vehicle. Cars are going to be harder and harder to come by. No one maintains things anymore, but worse, there has been a massive supply chain crisis, global chip shortage, and just not enough cars being built. But you're in luck-ish, because my suggestion is certainly not to buy a brand new car, but to get an older model, secondhand, one without a computer in it. There are two reasons for this. One, newer cars with computers are simply more difficult to fix. If you've got a brand new 2022 vehicle and shipping shuts down, mass rioting happening, the likelihood of you finding a technician who can fix it well, let alone acquire the parts needed, are significantly lowered compared to getting a common older vehicle that almost every mechanic has worked on before, like an early 2000s Ford, Toyota, Jeep. There will be way more parts kicking around and way more people able to help. Secondly, federal governments have actually been using car computers to track people for over a decade now. All the way back in 2014, the New York police used a stolen vehicle recovery feature from SiriusXM to make someone's Toyota 4Runner into a tracking device. And if you get yourself a nice garbage communist or fascist government, there is no doubt they will abuse that feature. And lastly, you want it to be off-roading so you have the option to not take main roads when the chaos hits. Highways, for example, are one of the most dangerous places to be in countries dealing with unrest and crime. In South Africa, I was repeatedly told, Lauren, do not drive at night, particularly under bridges, because people will wait on top of them with bricks and drop them through your window, go down, shoot you, and rob you. Great time. If it's an authoritarian government, no doubt you'll be dealing with checkpoints set up on main roads and highways as well to assess where you're going. If you're escaping, do your documents say you're the wrong kind of background and therefore need to be pulled in? You can get a solid 4x4 vehicle from like 2005 easily for under 10 grand, even half that, which I understand is still a lot, but big benefits there. Alternatively, you could just lift the shit out of your 1995 Toyota Corolla, throw some skulls and a flamethrower on it, and show these bitches you mean business. Then be sure to download an app like AllTrails that has mapped out thousands of paths through forests, woods, and back roads for you. You can even specifically select ones for off-roading and prepare a route if ever needed. And if that fails, follow the power lines. They necessarily have trails for repair cars to go down, and they are almost always empty. You can travel between entire cities using just power lines. Tip number 3, download the internet. I never really thought of this before until I saw my dad doing it. He had this computer just sitting in a corner running on idle for ages, and I asked him what it was doing. And he said, "Lauren, I am downloading every encyclopedia online, as well as virtually every dad rock song available. God forbid he live in a world without Pat Metheny or Billy Joel. That would be the true apocalypse for him." So that was a very important prepping material. But obviously, if shit hits the fan, you're gonna have to do a whole lot of do-it-yourself work, whether that be growing your own food, fixing your own engine, patching a wound. And if things get bad enough, well, the internet and all of those wonderful WikiHow sites that are out there, they'll probably go down as well. Or perhaps will be severely restricted or tracked by an authoritarian government. And no, I am not about to recommend you sit there for months individually screen recording and scanning things. Luckily, far more generous, crazy preppers have created a website containing zip files of every page you could possibly need. Websites like cityprepping.com have a free PDF library of everything from foraging, medicine, food preservation, hunting, trapping, and even what to do without a dentist. I've thought about that a lot. People in the 1800s just died from an infected tooth all the time. But all of this is put together from literature, military handbooks, web pages, and more. And these download options extend to maps, movies, all of Wikipedia, and I've linked a few of the websites that will show you how to do this in the description below, as well as YouTube instructions on how to. Just make sure you perhaps get a portable power station with a solar generator so you can start up that laptop or PC you're storing this all on if the power goes to.
4.
This is an obvious one. Food storing. There's a lot of people wishing they'd done this right now. Rice is a pretty obvious and easy one to go for first. It lasts years, it fills you up. But here are some more options and how long they'll last you if you are interested. I personally was very excited to see that raw honey almost never expires. The apocalypse doesn't have to taste bad, my friends. While all these bitches are killing each other over chicken nuggets in the city, we will be whining and dining in the middle of nowhere. You can buy some of this pre-made, you can prep your own storage with a food dehydrator and cans, or just get stuff that's been made for you for months from places like Patriot Supply. Then lastly, and most importantly, be armed. Guns, 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 guns. Pew pew. There's a joke I always hear from gun owners in liberal cities who say, "Prepping? Why would I need to do that? My neighbors are all doing that prepping for me," and then they cock their shotgun or whatever. And while obviously I do not condone stealing from your neighbors simply because they don't have weapons and you do, the principle still applies. It almost doesn't matter how much prepping you do if you have no ability to defend both it and yourself. We live in a world held together by a very thin layer or sheet of civility, if you will. As soon as there's a tear in said sheet, when people feel threatened or scared, all of that civility goes out the window, bye-bye, and humans return to our natural animalistic state. Just look at Ukraine right now. There's no police or lawyers, anyone sitting around to govern those looting or disagreements, so they're literally just tying people up naked to posts with duct tape and whipping and humiliating them. And we'd all like to sit here and hope that they are all actually guilty, but there were no court dates, so we don't know, because there can't be. And America, Canada, wherever, would absolutely turn to the same sorts of practices and have the same crime problems if we lost all our infrastructure today too. And I know I've mentioned this a million times, but I will never not find it the most incredible thing in the world to see liberals jumping up and down about arming the civilians of Ukraine. Great, yes, do it. But why can't you listen when we say that here in the West? We're yelling from the rooftops, hello, we want to be armed for exactly the same damn reason. Lest we need to protect our nation, ourselves, or even just hunt to provide for our family. So many people mock or don't see the necessity of these tools like guns and food prepping, whatever it might be, simply because they have never needed them in their entire lives. They have never even had to conceptualize needing them. The concept of scarcity is just nowhere in their peripheral. And you can tell this is the case because the second they're faced with an obvious situation where people need guns, they act like, whoa, this is wild. Of course they need guns. And they suddenly change their opinion. Like, how could you not see this before? I suppose it has been well documented in research that large portions of the population have trouble understanding conditional and hypothetical statements. Therefore, literally saying things like, but what if? Or, in this circumstance, you may need to be prepared, does not compute for them until they are whacked in the face as hard as possible by reality with said situation. But if you are watching this video, then hopefully you are in the portion of humans who can conceptualize different potential futures, both good or bad. You can look forward and prepare. And I wish you the best of luck with our crazy, crazy, unpredictable future, whatever it might be. And you know what? Hey, if you do follow all of my advice in this video, and against all odds, absolutely nothing catastrophic happens in our lifetime, in fact, it gets better, well, congratulations. You know, enjoy your farm, enjoy your off-roading, a few extra little picnic snacks. I could think of far worse bets to take. Have a good one, y'all. Make sure to share this video with your friends, at least the ones you like, and thank you for watching. I will see you next time.